Hi guys, I'm back with another product review. This isn't an Is It Worth It review, it's just a straight box opening. Parcel came through my door this morning and I've not opened it yet. I'm getting it live on camera as usual. I'm sticking off the beaten path, so you're not going to see any particularly sort of familiar or mainstream miniatures from me, but I've ordered a product from Mierce Miniatures, that's M-I-E-R-C-E Miniatures, and it came in this morning, and I'm going to break it open and show you what I've got. Cardboard box, pretty straightforward. As you can see, still sealed. I have not even broken the packing tape. Now, Mierce Miniatures was a very well-known British retail operation, which also created the Maelstrom wargaming venue, and basically the whole company went bust a few years ago, and in doing so it let down quite a lot of its customers who lost money on unfulfilled orders, and there was a lot of upset and concern over that. So, however, we'll get back to the boxing. It's a straight cardboard box. Mierce were controversial from the start. First, because there was a sense that money that was concealed from the receivers at Maelstrom Games, which is, as far as I know, there is no truth to. It was the founders' personal money that went towards Mierce, so I'm casting absolutely no aspersions. But it wasn't just controversial because of the circumstances of its beginning. It was controversial as well because first it launched before Maelstrom collapsed as a separate and independent company, and it launched with some spectacular miniatures, and they produced no exception. Now, since then they developed their range into two distinct directions. They had the Beast Lords and the Darklands ranges. And the Beast Lords range is pretty straightforward. Beast Lords are essentially, they're count-as units for what was Warhammer, is now Age of Sigmar. They're alternatives to the various classic fantasy races, very much in the Games Workshop style and mold. And it's interesting actually that some of the products that they produced, but meanwhile, Mierce have been developing their Darklands range. Now this is much more interesting. For a start, it's got a really interesting setting. It's essentially set in Britain, and Mierce is the Saxon name for the Kingdom of Mercia, which is a region of England which doesn't exist anymore officially, but it's unsurprisingly in the Nottingham region. In fact, Mercia, it more or less aligns completely with what these days. So they've imagined the different warring forces, the Saxons, the Jutes, the Britons, the Romans based in Byzantium, and they've also brought in some classic figures from sort of Lovecraftian mythology and from sort of Atlantean, I say mythology, but it's more fantasy, things that are only loosely, very, very loosely based on any historical value, but they've done it very imaginatively, and they've got all these different warring powers fighting over clear fantasy thrust, and it's packed full of some fascinating and interesting monsters. But the line is still very controversial. Why? Well, because of one particular faction in the line, and they're called the Isians, Y-S-I-A-N-S, and basically the whole deal with the Isians is that they are, now I may have some of the setting wrong because there's very little of it in the public domain now, but I believe they're sort of related to the ancient Atlanteans, but they're kind of fallen Atlanteans. That means they're all evil and cruel and nasty, so dressed in very little but leather straps, and possess vast tracts of land, I think is the safest way to put it. And I'm going to be podcasting separately on this whole topic, So when I ordered this from Mierce, now I have to say this was provided as a commercial sample by Mierce for a completely separate project that I'm working on. So huge gratitude to them for backing me on this. So I've not paid for this, so obviously I'm going to be somewhat positive towards Mierce because they've made this. I've got to say, I quite profoundly disagree with their aesthetic decisions about it. But I am not here to have a go at Mierce. No, not by any means. Although I do have my disagreements with that, I'm going to go into that in much more detail in my podcast, which I'll be recording in the next week or so. And that's going to be a long, rambling chat about not just Mierce, but all sorts of questions about the place of sex and sexuality in miniatures and miniatures manufacturing. What we're going to do now instead is actually take a look at this product. Now I've given you some context. So this is the Blood Maw, which is a monster from the Darklands range. So I'm going to take a cut here and I'll give you a close-up of what we're looking at. Right, I hope you can see fairly clearly. I've got everything out of the bag. We've got a base. It's a very large base. This is, I think, a 70mm round base. I'll put that off to one side. I'll come back to that in a second because there are some interesting points we'll look at. Then we've got, obviously the biggest bit is the body of the Vor itself. It is worth pointing out that the Blood Maw is anatomically accurate. Do you really want me to show you between the legs? Okay, well I will. If you're of a sensitive disposition, look away now. Yes, there we have a tiny penis and the testicles. There we go. So he is an anatomically accurate Blood Vor, and he is a male Blood Vor. Then we have a head. It is an eyeless monster with a big tongue. You see all these gaps, we're going to be fitting teeth into those. And that is going to fit onto there, like so. And we'll put them aside for now. And then we've got a couple of arms with 3 fingers, claws. On this one you can see it's got no claws, so you can get a sense of where we're going to match those claws when we come to get to it. 2 feet, again, without claws. And then, oh, look at all the claws and teeth. So these are, we've got finger claws here. In fact, if I turn that round, you can probably see it. Yes, there we go. So he's been very good. These are marked very clearly. So we've got his left, his right, his left. Now that may be a little bit confusing, but essentially these long claws here, these are his left hand claws. These then are his left foot claws, and these are his right foot claws. So those are all the hands and foot claws. We'll put them to one side. And then we've got 2 of these to do the mouth. And again, these are marked very well. We've got his right, lower jaw, and his left. So these are all the lower jaw parts. If we bring the head back, see that these teeth are all going to go into this lower jaw here. These are at the front. These are on, notice it says his right, so not my right, but his right. So we're talking over here, and then his left over there. So that's the lower jaw. And then this is the upper jaw. So again, looking at the upper jaw, bring this in closer. So these teeth are for the upper jaw center, his left, so down here, his right, so down here. So having taken you through the parts, let's have a look at the general quality. First thing is, there are some pretty prominent casting gates on these, and I think this body is a good example of the whole piece. So without showing you the gruesome details, we've clearly got casting gates that need to be clipped off around here, on the tip of his tail, and of course down here on his belly. So there's going to be a certain amount of clipping and cleaning definitely associated with building this, but looking over the whole thing, I mean, the detail is very finely sculpted, and the quality of the sculpting has really carried through into the casting. I mean, the musculature that you can see down on the side here is I mean, it's as anatomically accurate as you're going to get on a fantastic monster, with these scarrings down the sides and the veins lifted across the skin and the wrinkling of the knees. It's all extremely organic, and whilst it's fairly gross, I'd be the first to admit, it also has a real sort of aesthetic attention to detail that's hard to argue with. If we look at the fit then, although you can see that there's a casting gate on the head there that I'm going to have to clip off, you can also see this is not a casting mistake. This fits, if I can get the light down there, at the back of his throat. So you're actually taking the depth of his throat is deeper than his head. They've sculpted right back into the body of the beast to get that sense of throughput and depth on the sculpting. This is pretty horrible stuff. Gorgeous sculpting. The fit on the arms, again, there are casting gates that are going to have to come off. I'm going to have to play with that to see where the fit is, but it looks pretty neat. I'm guessing there is definitely going to need to be some liquid green stuff, or some filler, or some watered down milliput, something to go into that gap, even once I've taken the casting gate off, just to conceal the connection between arm and body. But it does look like it's a very neat connection indeed, so I suspect there won't be a lot. And to take a foot, in fact let's take the other foot because there's less of a casting issue there. So that, I think I've got the feet the right way around. Maybe that's the other foot. There we go, must be that foot. Yes, there we go. So yeah, check with the feet and the right way around. So again, we can see it's going to be a pretty decent, once we've cleaned off that surplus resin, there's going to be a pretty decent fit between leg and body. Very nice indeed. Now on the major parts, we've got the body, got the head. There's a small amount, you can see it on the head here around this hole, there's a small amount of flashing. At the back of the throat there, where the uvula lies, there is a teeny amount of flashing that's going to need to come off. The flashing is really much more visible on the claws. You can see it here on the claws on the hand. These are going to need to get clipped away and tidied up. And of course it's most obvious on these parts. Not surprising at all, small parts in resin typically do get a lot of flash. This is going to come off, I mean I could probably pull this, yeah, there we go. See, that's just coming off as I pull it. So that's not going to be difficult to clean up at all. But I mean there is quite a lot on there, it's worth pointing out, but you know, it's not a hard ask to just trim that away with a knife. So that's it. I'm not here, at least not in this video, to state any opinions or philosophical positions on Mierce as a company. Just to say that this is a really nice miniature. It's just what I was looking for this other project. I'm extremely grateful to Mierce for supporting me on it, which is why I've been so keen to come out and do you a quick shot of what I'm getting. Overall, I recommend it. So before I head off and start cleaning this up, just wanted to remind you that I had a video out last month reviewing a range of mech miniatures that were suitable for the use in Horizon Wars, and I did say there was going to be a giveaway. Now I've contacted everybody who commented on that video who was also a subscriber, and I have let them know by messaging through YouTube that they have won a miniature. Thus far only one of them has got back to me with a postal address. That's gone off to him, I hope he's received that safely. But if you did comment on my last video and you're a subscriber to the Precinct Omega channel, please do go and check your messages on YouTube. If you haven't seen a message from me telling you that you're a winner, there could be one waiting for you. So thank you once again for listening, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye bye.